Thank you for tuning in to the EuroDefense podcast, where we try to provide fresh new insights into matters of European politics and security. EuroDefense is a network of national chapters spread all across Europe with the aim of contributing to a credible and efficient European defense, relying on solidarity. The insights that are shared in this podcast represent the personal views of the participants and do not represent the view of the EuroDefense network or that of individual chapters. Let's start.
Let's start.
Right, Joost, welcome.
Yes, please. Thank you.
I'm
Hello,
very happy that you're joining me on this first episode of our podcast. First episode between with you, that is. In the future, you would become one of the hosts of the EuroDefense podcast. But now I'd like to take a moment to just dive into who you are and what your political positions are, etc. What do you think about the Dutch political landscape? So let's start about yourself. Where did you come from? What got you interested in politics?
Well, after my study, I immediately went to The Hague and became a civil servant to start with in the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And later on I joined an employers association working for international trade and economic development. In 1979, I became a member of parliament, and I stayed there 15 years. That is the Dutch parliament.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Dutch parliament, I was a Christian Democrat, and we had a big party, and my portfolio was trade and industry and Europe. And in that capacity, I also became in 1985 chairman of the European movement in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a staunch European from the outset. And that has remained so still today. I was not involved in military matters. Indeed, in foreign policy, of course, as Europe was closely connected with everything that has to do with foreign policy, but not in the military. When I left Parliament, I became chairman of the Chamber of Commerce and a number of social organizations, so that was more a local activity. But in 2002-03, I became a member of the European Economic and Social Committee in Brussels till 2018. So I was 15 years very active in Brussels in an advisory role to the European Commission and to the European Parliament and partly to the Council on a broad range of issues. And among them, in particular, indeed, again, industry, industrial development, and industrial transformation, and also including defense industry.
Very interesting. But so you've been around in Europe, and you have also seen a lot happening in Europe.
Yes.
Especially from the Dutch perspective, I wonder. Perhaps some of our listeners are not too familiar with the Dutch position in Europe. How do you see this? What do you see as the broad lines that determine the Dutch position in Europe? How European is the Netherlands?
Yeah, in general terms, I would say this. The Netherlands is a founding father. one of the 6 founding members of the European Union as it exists now. So we are in there since 1952, the coal and steel community. And that means that people are very, very well aware of the impact of European politics on their lives. This is not to say that they are very much in favor of it, but they know that the interests of this country is intimately linked to the interests of the surrounding world. Second element is that the Netherlands has always seen Europe as an economic project, not so much as a political project, such as it is seen in Germany and in France. In France and Germany, the overwhelming significance of history and the devastating developments of the last 2 centuries has always played an enormous role in the view to keep things in peace, and so they see the European economic. They saw already from the beginning, from the start, the European Economic Community as a peace project.
This was different from the Netherlands.
And that was completely different from the Netherlands, because we saw it as a way to earn more money, to put it like that.
That might not be surprising.
And that's a Dutch characteristic. Yes, indeed. This changed over time, but it has long stayed the main element. Europe is important for our jobs and our earning capacity. Yeah. So in the end, it falls together with what the Germans and the French wanted, because they used the jobs and earning capacity also as an instrument, but they saw it more from a political point of view.
There's a different angle involved.
And
then.
that is completely different, yes.
Right. Now we can come back to the current Dutch standpoint on Europe in a little bit. But why don't you maybe tell us a little bit about what is happening in the Netherlands right now in terms of politics? The last year has been very interesting, quite tumultuous even. We are currently in the process of forming a new government. Could you maybe introduce this?
Yeah. Well, it sounds strange, but it is also strange to me what is happening. It is un-Dutch. Of course, this country is very well used to coalition governments, and coalition governments with 4 or 5 parties requires a lot of time before you get into concrete arrangements for governments. But it is absolutely unique what is happening now, that we are 8 months without a government, because the negotiations for a new government has not yet accomplished. And so you may ask, why is this happening now? It is partly happening because there is a lot of confusion. We have behind us a long period of unstable governments, instability within the parties, a reorientation of traditional parties to others' points of view, and the traditional firm ground on which parties were building their politics has partly fallen away.
This might be surprising to people from outside of the Netherlands. Of course, we have been with Mark Rutte from the Liberal Party for a while now. He's been in the longest serving Dutch Prime Minister, I think.
Not yet the longest, but
he's getting there. So this instability.
But you have to take into account that a prime minister in this country is different from a prime minister in other countries. Formally, he is only president of the Council of Ministers. Let's say Macron, he is president of France. He is in charge. He nominates and sends away ministers. Yeah. In the UK, it's the same. In Germany, it is a little less because they have always a coalition government, at least with two parties. But the position of the Bundeskanzler is far stronger in principle than the Prime Minister in the Netherlands is. So the fact that Rutte stays long in office doesn't mean that he is the representative of stability. He as a person is very stable, but the system itself is less stable than that.
Right. And so has this also been reflected in the Dutch position towards Europe?
To finalize this point, the confusion, I spoke about confusion. There's a lot of confusion within the electorate, and that is the reason that we are now with 18 parties in Parliament, which is unheard of in any country in the world. 18 parties, some with 2 or 3 seats, and this stabilizes, in fact, the situation. The second point is that we are facing, like in other countries, enormous challenges. The climate change, which is going to cost a lot of money. The energy transition, housing difficulties for the younger generation is a major problem. Pensions, in every country we see the same. Now, it is in other countries it is sorted out within a government, and we try to sort it out in a so-called coalition agreement before the agreement is formally leading to a government. As soon as it starts, all these challenges will be met.
Right.
As regards Europe, as I said, the Dutch in general have always accepted Europe as a reality of life. Yeah, and there was not much enthusiasm, but it was never criticized in a way that we had parties that would go out of it. A Brexit would be completely unthinkable in this country. Totally unthinkable. Now, I feel that in this situation is a change, and I'm glad to say in a positive direction.
Right. What is this change that you?
The change I see the change I see is that after a long period of a very critical attitude towards Europe, that has been noticed in many other countries. The Greeks and the Italians are not very fond of Dutch positions, because Rutte has always taken a very strong position against them.
Which is fitting with the classical Dutch economic interpretation of Europe.
Indeed, indeed. But what I see is an understream, an undercurrent, which is, in my view, very positive. And that is, simply said, Trump, Brexit, and China have led to a change of orientation, of political orientation in this country. And this political orientation can be defined as we are becoming more pro-European, also in a political sense of the word. And this is absolutely a step, in my view, a great step forward.